Okay, so today's video, what I want to do is a deep dive into some of the aspects of the 2.0 release for the Nano Cortex. So this is a release that just came out recently. I've had my Nano Cortex since the first came out, and I'm really excited about this release. There's a lot of new features in it, and I figured I want to take a few videos and go through some of the stuff in detail. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the new compressors and the new overdrives. So I've got my Nano Cortex running. I've got my app up on my phone. You can see it here. And right now I'm running a preset I created a long time ago that's using an amalgam capture of a 2-Rock OD50. So a nice, just kind of dumble-ish kind of clean tone. And if we look at the Nano Cortex, again, just do a quick overview. Our presets, we choose our capture. We choose our cab or IR if the capture doesn't have a cab built into it. And then we've got our effect slots. And with the Nano Cortex now, you've got up front, you've got an input gate, and then you've got 2 pre slots and 3 post slots. So in the first pre slot, you can use the transpose, or you can use a utility, EQ, or gate or something like that, a compressor, or an overdrive. In the second pre-slot, you can use the utility, the compressor, or the overdrive. You just can't use the transpose. And then in your post slots, in the first one is for modulation, or you can use utilities or compressors. The second one's for delays, or again, you could use utilities or compressors, or the third one's reverbs, or you can use utilities or compressors. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about compressors and overdrive. So we'll talk about compression in terms of the pre-slots and the post-slots, and then we'll also talk about the overdrives, which can only be in the pre-slots. So in my preset here, you can see I don't have any of the new effect. I only have the analog delay, which came with a 1.0 release, and I have the Mine Hall reverb, which also came with that release. So let's go ahead. I'm going to turn the delay off. I'm going to leave the reverb on, and maybe we'll change the reverb. So that's relatively dry. So let's go ahead and check out some of the compressors. So first, I want to bring this up. This is a comparison as to the compressors that are on the Nano Cortex as opposed to the Quad Cortex. So this is something I put together just for myself to understand where the overlaps were. And so the second column with the X's, that's what the Nano Cortex has. So the Nano Cortex has the legendary 87, both in mono and stereo. And this is something I should talk about with the compression on the Nano Cortex. If you're using compression in the pre-slot, it's a mono because there's no parallel processing. There's no stereo signals before you get to the effects in the post. So that's all mono. If you're using compression in the post, it's the stereo because they want to make sure that the compressor is not negating the stereo delays or the stereo modulations or stuff like that. So you've got the legendary 7, you've got the opto-comp, solid state compression, and the VCA comp. So really, to me, the big thing missing here, or something I use on the Quad Cortex a lot, is the Joule compressor. I use that a lot kind of at the front of the chain as if it was a compressor on a pedal board. So I would love to see if they would add that in later on, but for now, we'll just kind of let it go. So if I go here, and I go to my pre-slot, I go ahead, I'm just going to legendary 7, done, and I'm going to turn it on. Well, first off, let's hear it without. So you can hear this compressor is adding some signal gain to it, probably from the makeup, and that's pushing this capture into a little bit of crunch. A little bit of grit there now. One of the things I love about this capture of this OD50 that Amalgam created is there's some grit there if you push it. And so you can see here, you've got your input level, a ratio, attack, release, makeup, all your normal compression stuff. So just to kind of talk about those in general, I'm not going to go super deep. The input levels is about really is how much do I want to compress the signal. The ratio kind of controls the slope of the compression if you think about it as a curve. Attack is the time of how long do I let the attack go before I kind of compress it down. The release is how long do I wait to release it. Makeup is the level you're pushing the signal up to compensate for the compression. So this 4 dB makeup is probably what's pushing our amp into overdrive a little bit, and then mix is pretty self-explanatory. So for this, this is kind of nice. Just has a little bit of compression and it's pushing the gain into the amp a little bit. If we go to the opto comp, and so you can see the default settings here are a little bit lower. More, the threshold's down, the ratio's less, the attack's a little less. You see the makeup's higher because the threshold's been dropped. And then you got the VCA. So, I mean, overall, I don't find the compressors sound all that different. I think if you were to line these up and try to make all the settings exactly the same, you'd have a hard time picking them out. I'm sure there are some folks out there who have a really good ear and use compressors a lot, kind of in a studio, and they could hear it and go like, "Oh no, that's the VCA, that's the solid state." But personally, I don't hear a lot of difference, so I tend to just pick one and go with it. Usually, I'll use the legendary 87. Sometimes I might use the Octo. But if we turn that off and we go to the post, so in the post, we can also use compressors. And like I said, here's where you get the stereo compressors. And for this, here, let me go back. We're going to change our preset. We're going to use a crunchy tone here. So this is Bad Cat. Actually, this is a capture that I created off of my Tonex device just to check that out, and I ended up liking kind of the sound of the amp. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and turn off the delay there. Again, we'll just change the reverb to the room. And let's go ahead and add a little compression post. So a lot of times where I would use this, so you can hear it, that's dropping the level quite a bit. When you're compressing on the back end, a lot of times what you want to do is drive up the makeup a little bit. So using compression after the amp model, what it allows you to do is create a little bit of the effect of sag. So if I turn the volume on the guitar, you hear the amp model's cleaning up. If I turn the compressor off and I still have the volume in the guitar down, you can hear the volume is really low. So I like to use compression after an amp like this in order to kind of make it sag. Like a real amp, you can turn the guitar volume down, and all you're doing is getting less gain. So these compressors can work really well kind of as a post-compression in order to do that. And you can play around with the settings that you want to use for that. But that's typically kind of how I would use it. But you can hear you got to kind of push that makeup level in order to too much in order to get it to compensate for the compression. So that's a really useful piece there. So let's go ahead and we're going to turn that compressor off. And we're going to go back to our OD50. So our nice clean tone, we'll turn off the delay. We'll go ahead and do the room reverb. And let's go ahead and try some of the overdrives. So we'll go to this one. So we'll start with right at the top, BD2. So this is a blues driver. Anybody who's used a blues driver, the controls should be, pretty familiar. You've got a gain, you've got a tone, you've got a volume. Bring the volume down a little bit. Sorry, the gain down, push the volume. Maybe you can bring the tone down a little bit more from there. So it sounds pretty good. We move to the OD1. This one's just got gain and level. So this isn't one of my favorites and isn't one that I use much on the Quad Cortex. The exotic, this is the BB preamp. So this one has separate bass and treble. So we can push the gain up a little bit, bring the treble down a little bit, push the volume down. You got the bass boost, so this is a bass one, but then there's the exotic Z boost. So this is for this is the RC booster. So this is a really good boost. One thing I like to do here is like bring the gain down on this one. Maybe pull the treble down a little bit, push the volume a little bit. So I like that one quite a bit. You got a fuzz. So you've got the settings here. You got fuzz, you got volume. You can choose what kind of pickup you have and the pickup level. So, I'm using a Strat, so I've got it on single with a pickup level kind of pretty high. You've got a tube screamer. So again, anybody who's used a tube screamer, I think this should look familiar. Maybe push the tone, push the level. You've got the microtubes. This is another bass pedal, so we'll skip that for now. You got an OD50. You got got the obsessive drive, and this is one that I like quite a bit. Bring the tone down just a little bit. Let me push the volume just a little bit. And then you've got the rat. So again, I think a great kind of selection of overdrives here. They all sound pretty good. I'm missing a Klon. I'd love to see the Nobel OD1, but overall, I think these are all kind of really good choices. If we go back and we switch back to the Bad Cat, and again, here's our, so we've got a driven sound here, not too high gain, but let's go ahead and add in an overdrive, and we'll use the tube screamer here. So typically what you would do is you bring down the tube screamer and push the level. And a lot of times people will use this to kind of tighten it up. Now it's not a very loose sound anyway, but if I turn it on, you could also do this with kind of a rat. Again, probably should have a higher gain on this. So both of those overdrives, one useful thing by having them on the Nano Cortex is that you can use them in front of gaining amps to kind of tighten up the sound. Now, unfortunately, this Bad Cat that I have right now isn't super loose anyway, but if you had a higher gain amp that you want to tighten up, you can use these overdrives to do that. The other option that I like in front of a gaining amp is I like to use the obsessive drive. To me, this is more like how, say, like Eric Johnson used kind of his BK Butler 2 driver. It's a nice selection of overdrives here that you use in either front of clean amps or gain amps, and I think they give you a way to really shape, some of the captures that you might be using. So personally, I'm super happy with kind of the level of new stuff that came with this version of the Nano Cortex. I think it's really kind of elevated the Nano Cortex to the point that I think if you're looking to get into the neural DSP world, it's like maybe you start with a Nano Cortex. Maybe you don't jump straight to a quad cortex. I think there's a few things missing. I'd love to see the dual compressor. I'd love to see a Klon style overdrive. I'd love to see the Nobel OD1. But those are small things and things I think they should be able to add at some point. So anyway, hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.